Welcome in, everyone. Ready to dive into something a little unsettling today. We're cracking open Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451.
A classic. And a perfect pick for a deep dive.
Right. Especially, well, with this copy, this 60th anniversary edition you sent in. Thanks for letting us use it. This one clearly means something to you.
It's definitely one of those books that sticks with you,
Yeah.
and for good reason.
Yeah, it's more than just a sci-fi thriller, isn't it? I mean, firemen starting fires instead of putting them out. Pretty intense image. But it gets under your skin in a way that goes beyond just the plot.
Absolutely. Fahrenheit 451 is really a reflection of Bradbury's own time and the anxieties that were bubbling beneath the surface back then.
The 1950s, a whole different world, right?
Right. Think Cold War paranoia, the
Yeah.
threat of communism, this kind of creeping fear of anything that seemed, different or challenging to the norm.
So Bradbury was tapping into that, but also this, I don't know, this unease with how technology and mass media, especially TV, were starting to influence people's lives.
He was really ahead of his time in that way. I mean, think about those billboards he describes, stretching 200 feet long because cars were moving so fast you couldn't possibly take in a regular billboard, right?
It's almost funny to picture, like, how big can we make these things?
Mhm.
But it speaks to this need for bigger and bolder distractions just to break through the noise.
Exactly. And then he takes us deeper into this world, into people's homes. And what does he give us? Seashells, those little radios constantly plugged in, drowning everything out with this never-ending stream of noise. No room for your own thoughts.
It's like he could see where we were headed with our earbuds and our smartphones always plugged in.
And we can't forget those parlor walls. Giant TVs taking over people's living rooms, replacing actual human interaction with, well, screens. Sound familiar?
A little too familiar. It's like he predicted our obsession with screens, how readily we substitute that for real connection.
And that's what makes it so unsettling, isn't it? Bradbury was drawing a direct line from the trends of his time, this embrace of technology, this craving for distraction, to a future where thinking, real dialogue, even feeling become casualties.
Sacrificed at the altar of easy entertainment.
Exactly. And, it's interesting how Bradbury uses these really subtle details to show us just how deeply this desire for distraction, for numbness, runs. Remember Clarisse, and how she's fascinated by the smell of kerosene on Montag's uniform.
It's like a novelty to her, something like exotic.
Right. But for Montag, it's just, I don't know, just another day at the office, part of the job. He doesn't even think about it.
She's so alive to the world around her, smells, sights, sounds, and he's just
Numb. And that's exactly what Clarisse disrupts. She's like, she notices the rain on her skin, the way the stars look, even the scent of things that Montag, with his nose full of kerosene and, well, everything else in that world, has completely tuned out.
it's like she's reminding him that there's this whole sensory world out there, a world that he's forgotten how to experience.
And that awakening takes a pretty dramatic turn, don't you think? When Montag witnesses that woman who chooses to burn alive with her books rather than live without them.
It's such a powerful moment in the book because up until that point, Montag's been stealing books, right? Almost like a kid pocketing shiny objects. But this woman's sacrifice, it turns those stolen words into something sacred, something worth dying for.
It forces him to really confront the cost of ignorance and the emptiness of a life that doesn't have that connection to something bigger, to ideas, to stories.
And even to other people. I mean, think about his relationship with Mildred. She's so checked out. And then there's that part with the dandelion.
The dandelion test.
The
yeah.
one Clarisse tells him about, where you rub it under your chin, and if it rubs off, it means you're in love.
And it doesn't work on Montag. He's like completely disconnected from his own emotions.
He's living in this numbed out state, just like everyone else plugged into their parlor walls and seashells. But something's changing in him. Those seeds of doubt that Clarisse planted, they're starting to grow.
He's not content with the easy answers anymore. He wants to understand, to really connect, right?
And that search for answers, that's what leads him to Faber.
The retired English professor, holed up with his books, living this kind of underground existence.
And it's through their conversations that Bradbury really gets to the heart of what he's trying to say, I think.
Because it's not just about, book burning,
Yeah.
right? Or even censorship. It's about these fundamental elements of a life well lived.
A life that's full of knowledge and experiences and real human connection.
Like, remember when Faber talks about the three things missing?
Yeah, he says it's quality information, right?
Leisure time for thought.
Oh, man, that one really gets me. Leisure time for thought. We're so bombarded with information now, constantly scrolling, consuming. when do we ever actually give ourselves the time to just think?
It's almost like we're afraid to. Like it's too much work.
Or maybe we've just forgotten how.
And that's the danger, right? Because then we become passive consumers of information instead of active participants in our own lives.
And then Bradbury introduces us to Beatty.
Captain Beatty, Montag's fire chief. Such a complex character.
Because he's clearly intelligent, well-read, but he's also the one who's most gung-ho about burning books. It's like, how can you understand the value of something and still be so eager to destroy it?
It's almost like he's chosen ignorance as a form of self-preservation.
And that monologue of his, chilling.
About how book burning, it didn't start with some, government decree. It was more like this slow creep, this gradual erosion of critical thought.
Until people just decided it was easier to let someone else do the thinking for them, even if it meant giving up their own freedom.
And isn't that kind of what we're facing now, though? I mean, with the algorithms and the echo chambers online, it's scarier than ever.
And it's easier than ever to just tune out, isn't it? To let ourselves get swept up in whatever narrative is being pushed on us. But Bradbury wants us to fight back, to resist that pull toward ignorance.
And Montag does, right? But it costs him everything. His home, his wife, his whole life basically goes up in smoke.
It's interesting, though, because fire takes on a whole different meaning at that point in the book, doesn't it? For most of the story, it's this destructive force, wiping out knowledge, thought, everything. But when Montag escapes, runs into that river, it's like a cleansing, like fire.
Baptizing him.
Exactly. He's reborn. And through that fire, he finds his way to a new kind of community.
The book people.
Living on the fringes, literally memorizing entire books to preserve them. So the stories, the ideas, they don't disappear completely.
It's such a powerful image. The idea that knowledge, that stories can live on in us.
Yeah.
In our memories, passed down through generations.
It makes you think, if books were outlawed, what book would you commit to memory? What knowledge would you want to keep safe? What would you want to pass on?
It's a powerful question, and one that Bradbury really forces us to confront. Because it's not just about memorizing words, is it? It's about recognizing that power that stories, that knowledge have to connect us to each other, to something bigger than ourselves, and to remind us that even in the darkest of times, even when it seems like everything is lost, there's always hope.
There's always a story worth remembering.